why societies collapse. The way we usually understand why societies collapse is we get it from Karl Marx. And basically what Karl Marx says, eventually your society collapses because it is a bottom-up process. If you treat workers badly, they will stop working. If you force them to work, they will go on strike. If you force them to work again, they will fight against you. They will rebel, okay? A worker revolution. Okay, that's what Karl Marx argues. And Peter Turchin says, okay, that's a really interesting theory, but if you look at the historical data, if you look at the evidence, the problem isn't the bottom. If you look at why societies collapse, it's not because of the people rebelling, it's because there's infighting among the elite. So there's civil war among the elite. That's his theory. If the problem with society isn't that there's too many poor people, the problem is there are too many rich people. That's the real problem. And that's why societies collapse. So let me explain to you this theory slowly. Okay? Elite overproduction. In this world, about 1200 BCE, we have something called a permanent hereditary elite. Permanent hereditary elite. Permanent just means they're always there. Hereditary means they pass on their status and their privilege and their wealth to the children. And this is new in human history because before there was an elite, but they were not permanent, meaning they could be changed over time. And they didn't pass their privileges on to their children. Everyone had to earn their privilege and power. So the elite was constantly shifting in society. But now in about the year 1200 BCE, you had a permanent hereditary elite. When you have that, you have three advantages. What the elite gives to society are three major advantages. The first major advantage is the idea of organization. Basically, think of the elite as your brain, as society's brain. They can help coordinate resources. And that's good for war. If you're fighting an enemy, you need an elite to lead you into battle. It's also good for public works. Okay, so think of the pyramids in Egypt and the Great Wall of China, right? You need an elite to organize your resources in order to create public works that benefit all of society. So the main thing here would be irrigation, right? So you need an elite in order to have irrigation. So that's the first major benefit of having a permanent hereditary elite. Second major advantage is because you have better organization, you have more wealth. Society becomes wealthier if you have a permanent elite. People work harder. And even though there's more inequality, inequality also forces people to work harder. And because you have these two things, organization and wealth, you also have scale. And what scale basically means is your population now can move up. Before, in the egalitarian society, when you didn't have a permanent elite, at most society could reach about 10,000 people. But now when you have a permanent elite, you can reach about 1 million people. So now you can scale up. So these are three major advantages to having an elite. But there's a problem with having an elite. And the problem is they engage in something called rent-seeking behavior. I want you guys to remember this term, rent-seeking behavior, because it's very important for our class. So what does this mean? Basically, so think of a landlord, right? A landlord doesn't really do anything, but a landlord has land that it can rent to you, the farmer. In exchange, you give me a share of your crop, right? So I don't do anything, but because I have land, I can rent it out to you. It turns out the elite mainly make their money through rent-seeking behavior. So let me give you another example of rent-seeking behavior. All of you want to go to university, right? Why do you want to go to university? What's your purpose? What's your purpose in going to university? Be honest. It's to get the degree, right? The degree, okay? And the degree is your ticket to success in society, okay? You believe that when you go to university, you are getting a ticket, the degree, in order to access social mobility, to access wealth in society. In other words, the universities are charging you rent. So the degree is basically rent. Now, some of you may say, wait, that's wrong because I'm going to university to learn, right? It's about learning. Well, guess what? When you actually go to university, you're going to discover they don't actually teach you that much. They don't have to teach you that much. And the reason why is you're stuck paying the rent. You need the degree, right? So you don't have to actually teach you anything. You have to come to class anyway. Does that make sense? The same thing for the school, where in order to get to university, you have to go through this high school. So you're here paying tuition and you're paying rent. You're not here in the school to learn. You're here in school to get the degree so that you can access university and get that degree. And all this process, all you're doing is paying rent, right? So if you have a school, you can charge people rent. Just as if you're a landlord, you can charge people rent for renting your room or real estate property. This is what we call rent-seeking behavior. Now, this kind of sucks. But what keeps the system together is the idea of a social contract. Basically, the idea of social contract is, yes, we the elite, we know we are charging you rent, and we know this sucks for you, the people, but we have a contract. So as the elite, I'm obligated to help society. So the way they help society is by giving back to society, okay? So what the elite do throughout society in the past is they organize public feasts and also public temples. So in today's society, like the parks, the schools, they're built by the government, right? But back then, they didn't have a government, they had the elites who were responsible for building temples, for holding public feasts. So this is the idea of a social contract. And the reason why you need a social contract is because if you don't have a social contract and you just charge rent, people will leave. So in this world, it's very chaotic, but there are different places, there are different social organizations you can go to. So if you are in Egypt and you don't really like Egypt, guess what? You can go to Mesopotamia. Okay? So these cities were in competition with each other for people because people provided labor and resources. So this is how it usually works. But over time, this system will break down. And it's because of rent-seeking behavior. So the first issue is this. With rent-seeking behavior, you create something called debt. So I'm a landlord, and you are paying me rent in order to use my land, right? And that land and that rent is usually a portion of your crops, okay? So does that make sense? Maybe 10% of your crop. But let's just say, for example, it's a bad year. It doesn't rain. And you don't have any crops to pay me rent. So what do? You're supposed to pay me a rent, but you don't have the money. So what do? So the first thing that happens is borrowing, okay? You basically go into debt. So you promise to pay me double in the next year. And I'm like, okay, fine. But you get unlucky, and the next year, it's also a bad year. And so for 5 years in a row, you are in debt. The problem with debt is this. Something called compound interest. Meaning like over time, the debt becomes so large, there's no way you can pay it off. If you can't pay it off, what happens now? Okay, good, yeah. So the idea is debt slavery, okay? So if you can't pay me back, you become my slave, okay? You promise me that your children will work for me for free. And so debt slavery becomes the natural product of rent-seeking behavior. Over time, you're always going to have a percentage of your population who go into debt slavery. And this creates a lot of instability in society because obviously they either want to run away or they want to rebel. The other problem is elite overproduction. And the idea here is everyone wants to be the renter, right? Everyone wants to be the landlord, right? But there's only so much land. So now people are competing for the power to charge rent. So over time, in any society, as the population increases, the number of people who go into debt slavery increase, and therefore people at the bottom are very angry. But at the same time, the elite, the number go up, but there's only a set amount of land, and therefore they have to fight over the land. So eventually, what happens is the society goes into war. Okay, as the elite fight each other for the right to charge rent, and so the main message of elite overproduction is unless you can control the number of the elite in your society must collapse. It must collapse because you have too many people fighting for too little power. It must collapse. So historically, what are things you can do to control the elite? What are things you can do to control the number of the elite? Kill the elite? So one possible thing you can do is the idea of land redistribution. So historically, this is one mechanism you can use to control the growth of the elite. And this is how kings came into power. Okay? So most societies have an elite, and then one person from the elite said, listen, this society is not working, let me redistribute the land and cancel debt in order for our society to keep on going. And this person became the king. So that's one possible solution. What's another possible solution? So you can also have a civil war, okay? Civil war. The elite can fight amongst themselves, and whoever wins gets everything, okay? So it's a second possible solution. What's another possible solution? Okay, empire building, right? Empire building. In other words, let's not fight amongst ourselves. Let's go and conquer new territory. It doesn't make sense. So because you have a permanent hereditary elite, okay, over time, they're going to reach a mass. Too many people. When you have too many elite, you have to resolve this issue through three ways, okay? The first thing you can do is kill the elite and redistribute the land. That's what a king does. Second thing you can do is have a civil war. The third thing you can do is create an empire. But these three solutions by themselves are also unstable, okay? Because land redistribution is basically a revolution. Civil war is war. Empire building is also war. So no matter how you do these things, you're always going to create instability. And eventually, your empire, your society will collapse. So let me give you another example of how this works to clarify it for you. So there's a book called Capital in the 21st Century by Thomas Piketty. Thomas Piketty is a French economist, and this is a very famous book that's been recently published. And in the book, he looked at the past 100 years of economic growth. And what he discovered that over time is the financial economy grows faster than the real economy. Capital grows faster than manufacturing. So if you look at capital, grows at 5%. Real economy grows at 2%. If things stay stable over time, this will happen to all societies. Capital will grow faster than the real economy. What this means is, let's just say you have $1 million, okay? I have $1 million. I have different options to invest my money. I can start a factory, or I can put all my money into real estate or the stock market. Where should I put my money? I can open a factory, right? Or I can put it in the stock market. Where should I put my money? Yes, and why? Exactly, do you understand? If you have money today, you do not put your money into the factories. You do not open a new business. You put it in the stock market because you make more money that way. What's the problem with that? It's just a bubble, guys, okay? Why is it a bubble? Because money isn't real. Capital isn't real. It's a fiction, you understand? So in other words, you don't work anymore. You're just renting now, okay? You're engaging in the rent-seeking behavior. We have too many people doing that. You have a society where nobody works. Does that make sense? Nobody does any work because all the wealth is being put into rent-seeking behavior. It's being put into speculation. So no one's doing any more work. No one's creating more wealth. And this eventually leads to social collapse at some point, all right? So Peter Turchin's theory of elite overproduction is because the number of rich people can only go up over time, your society must collapse at some point. Unless you choose to have a revolution, or you have a civil war, or you go invade other countries, okay? Those are your three options. But if you did that, that creates more instability. So over time, no matter how you structure your society, it will collapse.